Good evening and welcome to the Township of Chatham Township Committee meeting for Thursday, March 8th, 2018. Greg, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 5th, 2018. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 5th, 2018. And notice was filed with me on January 5th, 2018.
Thank you. Would you please stand for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Solen?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Swartz?
Here.
Mayor Ritter?
Here. Do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Mayor, before we approve the agenda, I just wanted to mention as a discussion item, we have the tree protection ordinance as a discussion item. As a follow-up to our conversation, the planning board, there was a misunderstanding of the process of going back and forth between the planning board and the township committee meeting. At the last planning board, we gave members an opportunity to send in comments if there was additional comments made, and there were also some changes made that weren't, I don't know, vetted's not the right word, but they weren't mentioned because it was just a misunderstanding of how the process works between municipal land use law, which Albert instructed us upon. So I would just like to table that discussion for tonight. It will go back to the planning board. When it comes back to us, it will not need to go back to the planning board, which we originally thought. So it'll come back here. We will have the opportunity to discuss it, introduce it, if so desired, and go from there.
Okay. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, is there a second to approve the agenda with the removal of the discussion item?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're moving on to reports. Before we begin this evening, Kevin, as our Director of Office of Emergency Management, will give a report. I'll just preface it by saying, I think credit goes to our police department, fire department, Department of Public Works, and all our first responders, EMS as well, for their hard work in this trying time, back-to-back nor'easters, winter storms. And Kevin did a great job as well in helping us get the word out and keeping people abreast of what's going on with our communications and such. So
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to start by giving a status of where we were prior to this most recent storm. We had 20 homes that still had power outages coming into this most recent snowstorm, Winter Storm Quinn, as they are calling it. Those houses were spread out all around town, which leads me to believe that many of those were from the house to the street and not street down. So they were individual houses. Trees probably fell on wires that they were having to take care of those. As unfortunately those 20 homes did not get their power restored as we headed into the storm. Obviously yesterday it got progressively worse as the volume increased around noon, and the power outages started to increase. At about 9 o'clock last night, we were almost about 100% without power throughout town. By 2:30 a.m., that number had dropped to 48%, and by 9 a.m. this morning, that was cut in half again to about 24%. JCP&L is out and working under very difficult conditions. They're still out there tonight, and so they are working diligently under trying conditions to try and get it done. If any of you saw our Facebook page, and thank you, Mayor, for posting the OEM map with the wires and trees down, you understand how widespread this situation in this storm was. The police department, you already mentioned, Mayor, but I will mention it again, over a 24-hour period from noon yesterday to today, they responded to 120 calls. They're absolutely wonderful. I just want to say thank you to Lieutenant Miller, who is a Deputy OEM Coordinator. He was stuck on Route 287 last night for 5 hours, and he was directing the EOC center from his car and his cell phone. He eventually did get in, and he went home briefly this morning, came back, and was on duty this morning again, directing the troops, so to speak. We did have numerous requests for warming stations last night, and it was a difficult decision, but given the circumstances, of tree limbs and trees and the fallen wires. We had to make a call, and we made the call not to open a warming station as it was too dangerous to assume that people could get there safely. It was best to shelter in place, and we put that message out. We opened up the warming station here today at 12:30 at the municipal building and 1 p.m. at the library. There were people here charging. I did receive a message from the director of the library. She had 10 charging stations open. They were all full, and the kids' room was exactly that, a kids' room, and it was full. So it was very crowded at the library, and we did have traffic here. Well done on that. Public Works, can't say enough. They arrived at 3 a.m. on Wednesday morning to be on station for the coming storm. So they already had a long night even before the snow came. But they were here. They did get out. They were out again at 2 a.m. last night and again this morning. When they weren't plowing, they switched directives and were cutting trees. So trying to clear the roads. So they did an outstanding job. EMS had 2 full squads, 2 full crews on standby last night. They went out on 5 calls. Thank God none of them real serious. One was somewhat serious. When they go out in those conditions, and the conditions we had, the fire department goes out with them also to help out and shovel, clear trees, help lift, whatever they can do. So it's great that our fire department goes along with them. The fire department, speaking of the fire departments, Chatham Township Fire Department, Green Village Fire Department, numerous calls. The Chatham Township Fire Department and out of the Southern Boulevard Station were called out 41 times. That number may have increased since then. 25 of those were for wire fires. And if you saw the news today, a gentleman in Franklin Lakes drove around a barricade, hit a live wire, his car exploded in flames, and he was killed. So you have to treat every wire like it's a live wire until you know different. Please pay attention to the barriers, pay attention to the markers. Don't assume when it comes to wires. And everyone is, the crews are out there trying to get to them, as well as our Public Works crews will clear them once we know they're cleared and not live. Dr. LaSousa was on a call this morning. I know there are still 3 schools without power. I believe there will be a delayed opening tomorrow, but they are going to make a final call at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning as to whether schools will be opened or not. The public schools. I know St. Pat's School will be open tomorrow. They do have power in the borough, and so better to be there, I suppose, than home if they can get there. Just want to say also, several churches opened their doors to their community, and I just think that's outstanding. We had I know my fellow members of the Knights of Columbus were passing around generators. A couple of people had extra generators, and they were putting the word out. I just think in times like this, neighbor helping neighbor, that's what it's all about. That's what makes Chatham special, and we appreciate those efforts for everyone helping each other out. And again, like I said, I just wanted to say a special thank you to Tom for all his hard work, particularly from Route 287 last night. I want to thank Karen for all her contact with JCP&L and providing updates, also to put out the information on Facebook. It's nice over the last several years that we have developed those relationships, and we can count on them when we need them, and that's why you do it. And last, I'm wearing the green tie. The St. Patrick's Day Parade will go on Saturday at Morristown, snow or not. It's amazing what the Irish will march through if there's a Guinness at the end of it. So we'll be doing that
next
on Saturday.
Saturday,
No, this Saturday.
Well, they're a week ahead of time.
They're a week ahead. Well, you got to get a jump on it. You can't think you're only going to have, And by the way, this Sunday, right here again, the Chatham Township Historical Society, along with the Chatham Borough Historic Society, will present a joint presentation. You may have seen this in the paper, Discovery of a Masterpiece, presented by Mallory Mortellaro. It was about the Rodin sculpture that was found in Madison's borough building, the Dodge building. So it's a wonderful discovery. This young lady did research on it, found it. No one, I guess, thought it was real until she did enough research and got to the right people, and sure enough, it was real. So it's quite a find. It's a spectacular story. And that'll be 2 p.m. here Sunday in this chamber, I believe, as a joint session.
Great.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Typhoon?
Yes, Your Honor. And I want to give DPW update, and let me give you an update as to non-storm related stuff first real quick. And DPW finished the swamp road, and they regraded it and fixed the potholes. But they were still doing the potholes throughout the town. And the mulch date is March 29th, and double ground finer course mulch will be available. And also, up until the storm, they were doing the spring cleanup throughout the town. So, storm update. As you know, that we were expecting 6 to 12 inches snow, but we got 20 inches snow. And 20 inches snow is fine, but we got it in 7 hours. That's not fine. So 7 hours, 20 inches, 3 inches per hour, per hour. And so DPW's priority is opening up the roads for emergency personnel. So they wanted me to relay this to everyone here to make sure we know what their priority is. So 27 trucks have been out. And since 12:30 p.m. Wednesday, they started with salting, and they use 100-ton salt, which means normal storm they use 50 tons. So this is double, 100-ton salt. And while they were doing salting, right after that, immediately after that, they went to the plowing. And as of now, as of like 5:30, I met with the director of DPW, Rich Young, which I recognize him and everyone in the department. Sandy Hill area is the only area that had actually that has the worst damage, and Noe was closed around 5:30 p.m. So once the wires are cleared, and then our DPW folks will be able to clear the roads. That's important also. They wanted me to relay this. DPW cannot touch the wires. They cannot touch the wires, and utility company can. So once the utility company clear the wires and hanging wires, and as Kevin mentioned, every wire we should treat as live, and then our folks, DPW, can go in and clear the roads. Stay off the roads, stay off the roads, and stay off the roads. And that's about it for the storm update as far as DPW. One more thing I wanted to mention, this is non-storm related and recognition to make, and I want to recognize our high school basketball team, boys and girls. They're making history this year, and I just wanted to mention that. And I want to recognize Deputy Mayor Karen Swartz and Mayor Kurt Ritter for their communication with the folks throughout the township, so making sure that everyone is up to date what's going on with the snow, with the storm. Thank you, Your Honor. That's it.
Thank you. Mike?
Just nothing to report, Mayor, but just add my congratulations and thank you and recognition to all the people who've been working so hard on the storm, the first responders, the DPW, the utility workers, and all the communications that went on behind the scenes. So, but on that note, that's all.
Great. Thank you. Karen?
Well, our utility information, I guess, is taking precedent tonight. Just a word on something a little more mundane, replacing the water main under Lenape Trail. Because of the snow this week, they are taking the rest of the week off to allow our other first responders and our DPW to get ahead of that. So the Lenape Trail project will be halted until Monday. They expect to be done really by the end of March, replacing the entire water main. They got about 600 feet done just in the first part of the week, and then they will allow that trench to settle as they did with Lafayette Avenue. So that's New Jersey American Water's project on the Lenape Trail water main. Additionally, just getting back to our JCP&L conversations, folks, I got a call right at the top of the list yesterday afternoon from our area manager, Rob Walton, and I said, I hope you're calling me at the top of the list because of alphabetical reasons. And he said, no, I'm calling at the top of the list starting by who has the most outages. And Chatham Township was right there in all of his area, which is about from 287 and anything north of Route 78. So when we think that, when we think we've got it bad, folks, this one we really did. We are working on keeping the numbers straight for everybody. They're going to add to their restoration throughout the night. Hopefully, if you're without power, you'll be one of the ones who gets it back this evening. It's very hard to be optimistic that we're going to get 100% restoration within the next 24 hours. There's an awful lot of outages. As we've said, a lot of trees have taken down a lot of wires. So we ask for your patience, and really that's it. And we're out, Mike's out. We've all experienced power outages, and you're not alone, folks. So thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Karen. Just a couple of items to report as it relates to the communications of the storm itself. We have been utilizing Facebook extensively and Twitter. In fact, when the Act Now alert went out and posted the Facebook link, over the past 2 storms, and this storm especially, we've seen an increase of over 200 people following us on Facebook. So it's a great opportunity for people. If you have not liked us or followed us on Facebook, I encourage you to do so. And then obviously, always remind people to register for the Act Now alerts, which you can find on the website itself. 2 other items as it relates to public forums on public health. On March 27th at 7 p.m. here in the municipal building, we're going to be hosting a community talk on vaping and the dangers of vaping. This is going to be hosted or led by Christina Martins, who's a director at the she's a health educator, I should say, at the Southern New Jersey Prenatal Co-op. And then on April 24th at 7 p.m., we're going to be hosting a talk with Glenn Duncan, who is a director over at the Huntington Drug Awareness Program on marijuana. We'll have more information on this to come in the coming weeks, but just want to let everyone know that these 2 programs are going to be scheduled again March 27th and April 24th. We got these speakers via the Morris County Prosecutor's Office and whatnot, so more to come on that. John?
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry for being late. 4 road closures, and I was getting worried I wasn't going to make it. I just wanted to jump to the consent agenda and just explain some of the resolutions that are on the consent agenda. The first being the road resurfacing. We are proposing to do some road resurfacing as soon as the weather breaks. This is money that was dedicated last year for resurfacing, and the Morris County Co-op, it's on a it's on a per ton basis, so it's not like a lump sum contract that we have with the Morris County. It's on a per ton basis, and then when I did my estimates on tonnage, I was conservative. I had approximately a 20% contingency factor, because when we're resurfacing the roads, some of the roads we overlaid, we didn't mill, and then when you just overlay, the road is not uniform. We have a leveling course, and it's hard to estimate exactly what the quantity is. But last year the quantities were very within the estimates, and so we have money that's left over, so we're just getting a jump on paving. And the roads that we targeted for resurfacing with this first phase is Bridge, Central, Hickory, Gibbons, Henry, and Memorial Drive. So, so the resolution for tonight is to award the Morris County Co-op again for doing resurfacing, and we're targeting those roads. And then also associated with several of the roads, we do have some line striping to do, and Denville line striping is also under the Morris County Co-op, so we would recommend making the award to both Tilcon and Denville line tonight. Another item on the consent agenda is which is exciting, the contract to award the design services for the Safe Routes to Schools grant for Lafayette Avenue. Finally, the DOT has worked out the agreement, and this resolution is to award a contract to IH Engineers, which is a consultant for the DOT, and this will bring us into the design phase and into the bid phase, and then DOT did agree to also reimburse for construction period services, so we would be going out to bid separately for that contract, but at least this gets us started on the design.
John, does that put us on track to actually do work when?
2020. it's surprising how long this phase took. And then after this phase, what they do, they'll start the design, they'll take the design documents, they'll send it down to Trenton. Trenton does a very thorough review from an environmental perspective. You'll have the Fish and Wildlife, you'll have SHPO, you'll have, it's about 7 agencies from the state review the document, and then that takes at least 3 to 6 months. And then it'll come back, and then when that's done, then they'll start to scrutinize the funding aspect of it, and looking at the various documents that we submitted. I don't know why they don't do it concurrently, but they don't. They wait until the CED is done, and then they review that, and then that'll take a couple more months. So I don't expect this to be out.
You thought I was kidding, right?
I thought you were kidding.
No, it's a very long process.
Okay. Well, thank you for riding herd on it.
Yeah, well, and hopefully they really didn't have the process down well regarding, and actually they kept saying they were understaffed, but they have additional staff. They have worked out the kinks with this process. So I'm hoping that the award to the consultant to design Shunpike comes much faster. So hopefully that comes. We actually have a meeting scheduled next week to meet with the consultant. Hopefully that process will only take a month or two to have the next contract in front of us. So hopeful.
And in connection with that, I get the pleasure of going to Rutgers tomorrow and spending a day. I'm not quite sure
And he
for
tried
what.
to get out of it, but
No, I didn't.
no,
Seriously, I have to spend a day in training on all the different aspects of being a community that accepts federal grant monies. So I'll give you a report the next time any of you are
Looking forward to it.
suffering from amnesia, or not amnesia, insomnia, and we'll put you to sleep.
Yeah,
You will be suffering from amnesia.
we might want amnesia after the fact.
Tom is our designated responsible in charge, so he has to go for responsible in charge training down at Rutgers. I think it's 3/4 of the day.
Yeah, that's a title that's never been assigned to me before.
John, I have a question for the resolution 062, which is the resurfacing. You may not have the answer, which is fine, but I want to know, or folks want to know, what about my street, right? So resurfacing, so that was asked before, this question. So how many phases that we're planning on doing? I know that has to do with budget and everything, so will we have something out there, or are we just going to go as, plan as we go? or-
We will have a separate capital ordinance that will be proposed for this year to add additional roads. We also got a grant approved this year from the DOT, which is doing a substantial amount of roads. And so hopefully we won't have too many people asking that question soon.
Hopefully, yeah.
And John, I wrote that resolution as well. When we did the line striping, is that it's not paint,
No,
it's that?
it's not the thermoplastic that always peels up on the
Oh, it
county
isn't?
roads. It's not.
Good, okay.
And then lastly, there is a change order regarding work related to the UV disinfection system that's being installed. As part of the startup of that process, we need to isolate a portion of the plant, and are having difficulties with some valves closing those valves. And this is actually money that was in fact targeted to replace those valves in-house and do that work. But it's after reviewing it with the operator, and it is a large task, and it would be difficult to do it in-house. And we do have funds that to cover this work, and so we did ask the contractor not to delay his work to give us a price to change out these valves. We did solicit another price, and he was very competitive. This was a lower price that we received for this change order work. So we would recommend awarding the increase in contract for that vendor to do that additional work at the plant. And so that's all I have, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Chief, you have anything to report? All right. Tom?
No, Mayor, I think you guys all covered it pretty well. I have nothing of any value to add at this point.
I would like to add, just for those who are listening, that we have not heard a definitive answer about Chatham Township recycling for tomorrow. Ordinarily, we are on the schedule for tomorrow. If we operate under the assumption that we're going to get collected, then I think it's probably better than thinking that maybe we won't be. I don't know whether you've
Yeah,
heard
no,
anything.
I did not hear anything today, and frankly, I forgot to check on that, but I would just urge people to, put their materials out. If it's not picked up, you bring it back in.
Right, I checked with one of
I
our
think it will be picked
members of
up.
the Board of Freeholders who actually hadn't had an answer at this point. And garbage picked up?
Same answer. I expect that it'll get picked up.
Great. Thank you. We'll now move it to a hearing of citizens. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close out the hearing of citizens. We have 2 ordinances for final adoption tonight. First is ordinance 2018-04, an ordinance to provide minimum and maximum ranges for the compensation for certain positions of employment in the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, New Jersey, effective January 1st, 2018. Any discussions among the committee?
No, I think we asked this.
This
It's
is,
not a salary ordinance, this is just a range ordinance.
no,
This
it is a salary ordinance that establishes the positions and the ranges. These are all the non-contracts, so the PBA and the Teamsters are not covered by this. This is everybody else. And it does establish ranges and establishes the positions. The specific salary for the current year gets done in the salary resolution that's adopted concurrently with the budget.
Thank you, Tom. Open up for a hearing of citizens. Anyone want to come forward? All right, we'll close it out. Do you have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Mr. Selin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes?
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Our next ordinance for final adoption is ordinance 2018-06, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending the provisions for the funding of open space acquisition. As we discussed, this ordinance basically is going to set the open space tax at 1 cent. Any discussion on this?
Reduces it from 2 cents to 1
Reduces from
cent.
2 to 1 cent. Discussion? Open up for a public hearing of the citizens. Close out the hearing of citizens. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second?
Mr. Selin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Our next ordinance, this was an ordinance for introduction, is 2018-06, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 2 titled Administration, Article 2 titled Municipal Officials and Employees by adding Section 2.4 titled Tax Collector. Tom?
Yes, Mayor. Oddly, we're in a position where we are in need of appointing a new tax collector with the recent retirement of Mary Ellen, who has been here for close to 40 years. And in looking in the code book for the ordinance to make sure that we got the procedures correct, lo and behold, there was nothing there. The position apparently, Mary Ellen was here, I guess, way before the code book was ever adopted and codified. And we could not find evidence of an ordinance that had ever been done that had actually created the position of tax collector per the state statute. So that's what this does. Albert put this together. It amends the section of the administrative code to formally continue and create the position of tax collector. So that's what it is. There's some other things that we will probably be coming back to in the coming months with additional amendments to the administrative code to create other positions that de facto exist but aren't described in the code book.
So we're saying we're going through, just to make sure everyone is...
Yeah.
Any discussion on this?
So what did we call it before?
This is a tax collector. But
Okay.
she just hasn't been, there hasn't been one appointed in 40 years.
So maybe Albert, you could explain the need for the legalese behind this, because my question goes to, if I'm the tax collector, we have many people who wear multiple hats, and we compensate them for that. But do codifying it like this put us at some other
No,
measure?
this doesn't change anything. We're required by statute to have a certified tax collector, and that's what we've had, and that's what we will have. That doesn't change anything. The tax collector is appointed for a 4-year term, which begins January 1st of the year in which they're appointed. So the person that we are recommending to be appointed will serve from now, and then starting in January, we'll have a 4-year term. There are tenure provisions upon reappointment after that first 4 years. So the statutory positions of the CFO, the tax collector, tax assessor, those gain tenure. The clerk, all can gain tenure after being appointed to a second term. So de facto, that's what we already have. And the position has existed in the salary ordinance every year. It just didn't exist, the method for appointing a tax collector just wasn't spelled out per this, and is required by the statute.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Selin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.
Public hearing on March 22nd.
Next up is the consent agenda. Do you want to read those off for us, Greg?
This evening, we have Resolution 2018-60, payment of bills, 2018-61, approving meeting minutes, 2018-62, road improvements resurfacing, 2018-63, road improvements line repainting, 2018-64, authorizing federal aid agreement, 2018-65, authorizing change order for plant and WPC UV upgrades project, 2018-66, authorizing redemption of tax sale certificate, 2018-67, refunding overpayment of taxes, and 2018-68, appointing tax collector.
Any questions on the consent agenda?
If we could, Tom, can you just explain the connection between our affordable housing obligation and 2018-066 as it pertains to the Vernon Grove?
I'm sorry, which one?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at something else. Forgive me. No, I saw Vernon Court, and not Vernon Grove. My
Yeah,
fault.
no, I can actually, though, explain the 066. That's the one you're asking about?
Yeah.
Yes, the tax sale, when it was held in 2016 for delinquent taxes, the collector sold a lien on a property that's one of our affordable units. When I learned of that recently, I consulted with Mr. Cruz because I didn't think that it was appropriate to have a tax lien on one of the affordable units because the lien holder would not ever be able to foreclose, which, I discussed it with the lien holder, had some, back and forth with him a little bit, and came to the conclusion, again with Albert's consent, that we should redeem that lien that gentleman holds and convert it into a municipal lien in order to make sure we preserve the affordable controls on that unit.
Okay.
So that's what this redeems it from that gentleman, and we'll convert it to a municipal lien.
It doesn't impact the definition of Vernon Grove or
No.
any of the numbers that are involved with that.
No.
So let me follow up on that, if I can, on Karen's question. So this lien doesn't go away now, it's just in our hands.
That's correct.
So now, how does that work in affordable housing, when you have a lien, that you have someone in an affordable housing unit who is supposed to be able to afford it, and now there's an existing tax lien, and you and I know that that's a difficult process, so where does this end up? Albert,
Not quite sure, but as Mr. Chickenham explained, the purpose of this is... the purpose of this is to preserve the affordability controls.
right.
Someone that has an affordable unit for tax lien purposes or tax purposes is treated no differently than any other resident. But the only difference here is that this tax sale certificate, instead of being held by a third party, is held by the municipality. And if the municipality so chooses at the end of a period, it can move to foreclose on that unit like it could on any other residential piece of property. If that occurs, one of two things will happen. Either the taxes are redeemed, or you get title to that unit, and then you would resell it as an affordable unit.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
Just one question, Mr. Mayor, for 065, resolution for the change order. And so I know you already mentioned what that is, but just one quick question, though. This is a substantial change order. The contract amount is $318,000. Change order is $52,000, $52,800. So it's like 17% change order. So is that unforeseen conditions, or is that user requested, or?
No, it's an unforeseen condition.
Okay.
It's an unforeseen condition, and it'll be problematic if we don't change these out, because we're trying to finalize the startup of the equipment, and this will, we need to isolate some equipment, and the valves are not holding. And we budgeted for this work, and it was contemplated to be done, but we need it done sooner than we need it done right away.
Okay, thank you.
So, and the other, we did just to, as, you know, we did check with another vendor just to check the price, and the other quote that we got was $65,000, which is a vendor that we use all the time, so it's, the pricing was very reasonable.
So you're saving $13,000
Yeah,
on,
yeah, correct.
the comparison.
Correct. For
Comparative to the next.
purposes, it's not,
lowest.
we reviewed the price, we negotiated the price, and I think it's a very reasonable price.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, John. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just, one more follow-up on 064, the federal aid agreement. What's in this federal aid agreement? I mean, is there something that, is something in the fine print that we should be concerned about?
The fine print is that we basically have to comply with all the federal requirements of the grant, or they don't give us the money.
Okay, fair enough.
Easy peasy.
And as part of the contract documents, the contract documents get even thicker with all the additional attachments and requirements, and Tom's going to learn all this with his training.
Yeah, and not to be snippy, because that's not in my character to do, but there's a reason that we didn't apply for federal grants in the past.
There are strings attached?
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to deal with.
But the
So after you
grant,
take this class, we'll be doing more of them, you're saying?
You're going to have to send somebody else. I'm not staying here forever. So by the time this grant is done, 2020, who knows?
Anyone else? Motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there a second?
Second?
Mr. Salim?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Next item for discussion, we've got the gun safety letter that Committeeman Kelly had prepared at the last meeting we discussed as a result of the horrible incident in Florida, what steps the committee could take. Mike had agreed to pen a letter which the committee could review and decide if they wanted to put their signature to it, or if they wanted to pen their own letter, or do whatever they want. So, Mike, I'll turn it over to you if you want to lead our discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you covered the highlights of the background of that. It's this is a topic that we as Township Committee people don't have a lot of authority to make changes that can result in public safety improvements. And yet, I think that we are the local elected representatives that have the best chance of having a finger on the pulse of what our constituents want, and our constituents really are part of the constituency for the other elected officials as you go up the chain to the state and national level. we raised this and discussed it briefly last meeting, and my thoughts in drafting this letter and in circulating it all in your packets was that we can serve a purpose by sharing this position with our elected officials and letting them know that we have their backs, so to speak, that letting them know what our sense is on what priority should be for an elected official, and that, recognizing that they are in a position where they can be buffeted by a lot of pressures on all sides on a controversial issue like this, that I think that we can serve a purpose by letting them know that this is an important issue, that and it's something that we think that they would well serve all of our constituents by making it a priority to take some kind of an action that would result in better public safety. So in that context, that was my intent in drafting this, and hopefully being very supportive of those elected officials, just as we're part of the same democratic process, and would like to play a role in it. So that being said, ideally, this would have the strongest impact if we, all five of us, saw fit to sign it, and that was kind of where we're at and having it in front of us now.
All right. Anyone else have a discussion?
I should have made this comment before, but now, additional funding for mental health services and school safety, I think that's the top priority, so I think it doesn't really matter. It's, it's symbolic, but I want it to be the first one on the bullet list. So that's the only comment I have.
I think
Otherwise,
that,
I'm in support of this.
I think that we're going to have a tough time, frankly, for all five of us to come up with one particular document that we all find comfortable signing when it comes to a matter of this nature. Because I think, you can say that you're not toying with Second Amendment rights, and yet it seems to me that anytime we go down this route, it appears as though we actually are. One thing that was brought up to me not long ago was the idea of a kid who signs up for the Marine Corps at age 18 and comes home and isn't allowed to buy a firearm for his own protection, perhaps the protection of his wife and family while he's serving. If you raise the federal age limit to buying a firearm for whatever use to the age of 21, now you're boxing out an entire realm of young people who actually are serving our nation and are carrying firearms, weapons, if you will, to protect our way of life. And now, when you look at it through that prism, suggesting on a federal level to raise the age to buy a firearm to 21 doesn't really seem to jive. Perhaps in the state of New Jersey it does, but if we're calling on our federal officials to make decisions like this, it's kind of trying to tell the federal government what to do with our Constitution, with our Second Amendment. I don't know whether that's really our place. Certainly, I don't feel comfortable putting my name to something with some of these other things in the letter also, dictating to manufacturers what they're allowed to produce when there's a call for certain things and so on. So notwithstanding the importance of addressing the events in Parkland, Florida, or the events anywhere else in our nation or throughout the world with gun violence, I think we are all too quick to affix our focus on guns as opposed to violence, and on the weapon as opposed to the cause and the underlying isolation that traditionally accompanies somebody who perpetrates these acts. So, with all due respect to Mike and the work that you've put into it, I find it hard for me to affix my name to something that has some of these fundamental differences.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just one more thing I want to mention about the age, and 18 versus 21, and obviously everyone has a different way of thinking, and probably on this committee, every committee member has some young children, and it's funny that I have an 18-year-old, so that's, I relate myself to it, so probably more than many of us here, because my daughter is almost 18. She would like to be 18. She has 4 more months to go. And so I can't, even if the most responsible kid, she's very responsible, and I just can't seem to think that she's gonna go buy a gun and so I believe that 18 is too young. That's just how I think, so.
Okay.
By the way, I have a daughter who is beyond 18, but she was 18 when she was 12, so.
She's advanced.
You got one of those, yeah. I would just say, and Mike and I have shared opinions on this before privately. My take on this is I am a staunch believer in the culture of life, and I think we embrace a lot of things in this country that put us on a path towards the culture of death. There's actually an assisted suicide bill right now in Trenton that I certainly oppose. They call it death with dignity, but that's not really what it is, and it's unfortunate, and of course we want to feel for those people who have debilitating diseases. But I think in general, I have long been a supporter of the culture of life. I believe in it firmly. I believe the weapons are a tool to evil and violence, but not the cause of it. I think Karen's points and some of the other points, I think Tom was surprised at some of my views. Didn't think I had them from a perspective of gun safety. Yeah, I think there are things in here that I'm not sure it furthers the goals. I'm not saying it's bad. For me, I have a different approach. So again, I appreciate the work and the effort and the conversation and the discussion. I think it should go on. My own son was taught gun safety by his grandfather at a very young age. I've always taught my children, you don't point a gun at someone unless you intend to kill them. And I think if there was more of an education from that perspective, not that that always works either. There are a lot of other issues, complicating issues that go into this. Mental health obviously is the big discussion. It's all part of it. So for me, there's just a bunch of different moving parts that I think need to be addressed in society as a whole. Certainly, we all want we don't want to see children perpetrating evil upon each other. How we get there is complicated. So sure, gun safety is part of it, and like I said, I have views on that, but I'm not sure this works for me.
All right.
What I like to think that I'm hearing is that all of us are totally opposed and outraged by the violence that we see. It's just a difference of how does one address that problem in a way that us five can be comfortable with our different backgrounds and priorities. Certainly I put the number of bulleted items on here that reflects my priorities. But I guess, is there a way that we can narrow this list down to where it falls within the range of all of our consensus on how to at least try to go forward, and maybe to start the conversation on that. The first item here is universal background checks. If and Kevin mentioned training. Do we have a consensus on that one, that universal background checks, and maybe coupled with a requirement for a training certificate before a gun is sold, something along those lines as one item that we could all agree on?
Yeah, I don't know if, going line by line, saying which one people agree on or which one should be added. I think, your letter in principle is good. As we said at the last meeting in particular, we have 5 voices on this committee. I think these 5 voices, maybe I'm just being humble, are no more powerful than the voices of the people watching at home or watching a replay of this video. And I would encourage everyone who's watching this replay or reading the article in the tap tomorrow to write their own letter to our legislators and voice their opinion and concern. It's not just one letter from the 5 of us, it's the 10,000 letters from Chatham Township. So rather than going line by line, which one do you agree with, which don't you agree with, I think this letter does serve as a nice template for everyone in this committee. And if you want to choose to, sign this letter as is, that's your prerogative. If you want to tweak it accordingly and submit your letter, I would encourage you to do so. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm a communications person by nature, much like you, Mike, and I do have some tweaks and whatnot. So if anyone else, wants to pen a letter, make a phone call, send an email, I would encourage you to do so. Anyone else?
No. I think I said my piece.
Can we do a discussion, or do you have hearing of citizens first? How does that work?
Are you finished with the discussion? And then to the public,
I, for one, will just go on record as saying that I would prefer to state my own opinions, unique to bringing my other 4 colleagues here on the dais into it, because I feel as though where I'm coming from is in a lot of different respects not going to reach a consensus any more than, unfortunately, Mike, we're looking at this, that the 5 of us would purport to agree with that any more than the 5 of us would purport to agree with my take on things. So I personally will step away from the matter as far as signing a letter for all 5 of us. So I won't be partaking in this letter or any other letter, because I would like to stand unique to my own philosophies on the matter, whether it comes from a mental health perspective, from a weapons perspective, from a Second Amendment perspective, from a background check perspective, to a certainly greater awareness of people in our community who are prone or who are possibly going to be the next attacker. How do we deal with that? So I think I will step aside from the idea of signing a letter altogether.
Anyone else?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for your efforts. We'll now close out the discussion. We'll now open it for hearing of citizens. Please come forward. State your name and address.
Hi, Maureen Kelly, 67 Mountain Avenue. Just to add on this, obviously I have been aware of Michael drafting this letter. One of the things I think you're missing is just the opportunity to speak as the body, that this carries more weight. If you send that to our elected representatives, whether it's Rodney or whether it's to our 2 senators, if you're speaking as a whole elected body, it means more. And having everybody send their own letter, it's fine in its own way, but it doesn't carry the same weight. And the second point I would like to make is, are you aware that the school district which our children attend is attempting to do something kind of similar? And the Chatham Township kids go there, and I think they are attempting to do something that may be somewhat similar, and I think we should have a little, coordination with that. I don't know what the borough might be doing. They might do something or not do something. I appreciate it's difficult. I certainly understand if you can't sign your name to something you don't agree with, but I think it would be better to go line by line on at least coming up with a minimal statement that you could make and everyone could feel comfortable with. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and to your point, the borough is coming up with something, I believe, at their next meeting. I, for one, would like to hear what they have to say. That might influence my thoughts as well. But I think the important thing we need to remember here is when you sign a letter like this, either collectively as a group or as an individual, the items listed here, you can poll everyone in town. I will guarantee you're not going to get 100% consensus on all of these points. That being said, I think it's a personal conviction or personal point of view as to what you want to sign your name to any particular letter. And just because you might have, vocal folks, on any particular issue, we saw it with the bear hunting and such, people come out and voice their opinions one way or the other. Just those who shout the loudest aren't always right, but they need to be considered and carefully thought about. So I appreciate the efforts that Mike took to put this together. I'm going to craft my own letter, if you don't mind me using some of your words and such, and maybe I'll share it with you, and if you want to put your name to my letter, we could do that as well. But at this point, I appreciate your comments and all those other folks who've come before us to speak. Anyone else who come forward? We'll close out the hearing of citizens. We have executive session this evening. Greg, you want to read those for us, please?
First, I'll ask our attorney to confirm if we need this. Do we need the exec? Yeah, Resolution 2018-P-03, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Committee with the public excluded. Whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Litigation in the matter of the Township of Chatham for a judgment of compliance of its third round housing element and fair share plan, docket number MRS-L-1659-15. Litigation, Fair Share Housing Center versus Township of Chatham, docket number MRS-L-0000234-18. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public upon conclusion of the matter under discussion, and in any event when appropriate pursuant to NJSA 10:4-7 and 4-13, the committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Mr. Solin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.